Live now to Eva Zamaris from Bradley International Airport. I understand, Eva, you have just spoken with an eyewitness who saw this B-17 take off.
Well, good morning to you, Carrie. Yes, I'm joined now live by Brian Hamer. He was actually nearby waiting for a meeting to start when he looked up and he noticed the B-17. Tell me a little bit about what you saw.
We were standing outside a business that's not too far from the end of the runway where the airplanes take off and they climb out, and noticed one climbing out that was not normal. You don't see B-17s flying very often, so we took note of it and watched as it flew by in some amount of awe as he flew off into the distance. And then I noticed the number 3 engine, or the one that's next to the co-pilot side of the airplane, the inboard one, sputter, smoke, and a big plume of smoke came out the back. I commented to my associate who was waiting with me that he had just lost an engine. And then you could hear it sputtering, and he wasn't climbing anymore. He was making a very large, very wide turn to get back to the airport, and we watched him as he went, and I hoped he made it back. And then a short while later heard a big rumble and a huge ball of black smoke come from the area of the airport, and we kind of thought the worst, that he may not have made it, and as it turns out, it didn't look like he did.
So what were you seeing as you were waiting? Did you see the plumes of smoke fire immediately following this crash?
Well, we heard the rumble and we weren't sure what it was. And of course, from where we were, there was trees between us, and then you see the big ball of smoke go straight into the air. And it's like, it wasn't a little amount of smoke. It was massive, deep black smoke going up. So we kind of knew what it was, and it lasted for a considerable amount of time. So we feared the worst.
And you were taking note of it because you had recognized that it was a B-17, that you knew that you didn't see these all too often.
Right. Yeah. My father was in the Air Force for 30 years and a pilot for 50 years. And, we've been to many air shows, and seen them. And you don't see it fly by very often. So you kind of watch as they go by, and, it was interesting to see, and that's why we paid attention to it. And I pointed out to my friend who didn't know what it was, and actually watched it have trouble and just never be able to regain power is what it looked like. It looked like he was struggling for power to get up into the air. So,
well, Brian, thank you so much for joining us live on the air. We really do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And we're actually just going to step to the side really quickly because we aren't far from where this crash site is. I'm going to have my photographer, Andy, just point the camera this way, zoom in a little bit. We're not far from the crash site. We're by the International Arrivals Building here at Bradley. Again, as I've been saying here, that you could see this massive presence here. You could see fire trucks, state police, ambulances. We also know that the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection is also here. They're responding to the scene. And when we first got here shortly before 11 o'clock, we could see the smoke coming from this plane, and we could see them pouring water onto this vintage B-17. We also saw Lifestar taking off from the scene shortly after we got here. Again, this is still very much an active scene, an ongoing investigation, and I will have another live report coming up right here on Channel 3. Live at Bradley this morning, I'm Eva Zamaris, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.